life's a pain, but you got me. Yeah, life's a pain, but I got you.
Hey, what's up, parasites? We are finally here for this very long, very redone and reshot video for Venom War, which I've been talking about since December, I think, was when I originally was going to release this. And I did one version of this video where I just really cut into how much I didn't like the book. And I thought it was just a very negative video. And the thing about me is that although it was honest and how I felt at the moment, I also felt like it was mean on a level that doesn't really represent me as a person fully. Like, it was, like I said, honest, but I really cut loose in that video. And I thought, as I was editing it, man, this sounds like personal. And I don't want to sound personal when I'm reviewing something, because it's not. Like, the stakes couldn't be lower. It's just my opinion I'm giving, and I shouldn't be actively pushing something so harsh. At least that's how I feel. I know other people do that online, and it gets them a lot of views sometimes, and, you know, kind of makes little clips that go out there and get shared in the community. But for me, I was just like, I don't know if I can release this video. I'm pretty mean on the editing staff, like Jordan White and some of the people that work on this, even though I don't know them personally. And I'm pretty mean on Al Ewing. You know, his run was something that I wanted to avoid originally when doing the Venom vlogs. I was like, we're just going to end on Donny Cates. It was a positive enough note, even though I had a lot of criticisms. I'm like, it's an interesting place to leave Eddie. He's the King in Black. He has a son. I don't really care what happens next as far as reviewing him for the show. But then a lot of people were like, well, it's pretty good. You should check it out. So we did read like the first 12 issues. And I was like, yeah, this is not bad. This was enough in there. The street level stuff, especially with Dylan, I was like, okay, I'm into this. And some of the space stuff, I was like, all right, I like the concept, but I need to see where this goes. And to me, the space concept stuff that was, King in Black and everything just really fell apart in time. Although I did like the concept of the garden and some of these other things, I can tell there was a shift in the quality of writing, in my opinion. And I think that's because, as we found out now, Ram V apparently worked really closely with Al Ewing in the beginning on this, and then Ram V signed an exclusive deal at DC and left the Carnage book and left, I guess, sharing input with Al Ewing, and whatever plan they ultimately had, some of that kind of never got finished. So Al was just going on his own after that and doing his best. And then you had Torin come in and do some fill-in issues, and it just started to feel really messy and all over the place, pretty much from like Dark Web onward. And Dark Web already was just a terrible thrown together event book that was poorly edited and everything. And I was, fairly mean on that one, but I did hold myself back. And so when I was going through this Venom War thing, I said, you know what, let me just take some time away. Let me get a little bit less I guess emotional over it. Because again, it's not really personal, but I was bringing a lot of real life baggage, I feel, into my review of it. And that's not fair to Al Ewing and Jordan White and Iban Coelho, who I think saves this book in a way with his amazing artwork. And there's a lot of tie-in books to this, way too many in my opinion, because a lot of them felt like filler and not even good filler. And some of them, though, were pretty fun. Like, I liked the Deadpool one. I thought the Wolverine one was pretty good, and the Daredevil one-shot wasn't so bad. So, there were some things in here that I liked overall. Even the one that was like Flash Thompson and Natasha Romanoff, like that little miniseries, the Venomous kind of thing, that wasn't so bad either. And I thought, okay, there's some sparks in here. One big moment I know that everybody talks about is the moment in the Spider-Man miniseries of Venom War, where it's like his bonding with the symbiote again and kind of them reestablishing a new future for their possible relationship, which is why some people were theorizing that Peter might have become Venom. I still think Ben Reilly should have become Venom, because they got to do something with that character, or Kane or someone, but whatever. They got this new Venom thing, and I will say I am drawing the line here. After I talk about Venom War, I am not getting into the Mary Jane stuff or, the Paul stuff. Like, this fandom in a lot of ways is also like something I just, some of that discourse I don't want to be a part of. Like, it's really negative, especially if you believe Twitter. Now, I don't put a lot of stock into X or Twitter. Like, I don't really do that. I feel like a percentage of the population of the planet is on that platform, and a lot of them just troll, or they just, join a group to yell at things just to do it or to piss people off. Like, I'll see people kind of rage bait. They post a theory or a comment that they don't even believe in, but they just do it to get traction and get people to engage with them so that they can go up and get viral on something and just get recognized. And I don't like that type of mentality either. I think that's kind of pathetic in my honest opinion, to do something like that. And so my original Venom War video, I was watching it going, this feels like that. This feels pathetic. I do believe in some of the criticisms I'm giving, but I felt like I did go a little overboard in some way. So I wiped that footage, I deleted it, and I said, I'm just going to give myself some time and wait, and then reread the book and try to, and then read the miniseries and all the stuff that tied in, and just give a in-depth review of it overall. Because if I go in-depth, I'll just get upset again on some things because I always think about this, and this is why, even though it's not personal, why my emotions get heightened. It's that I know, as a former editor and writer and someone who worked in comics for a brief time, I do know that there are people out there that would kill to get the job to write Venom, and they have the talent to back it up. And I think Al Ewing has a ton of talent. I don't want to just sit here and slam on his story because I don't like it. I know he has talent. I've read books of his that I really, really enjoyed. This Venom run started off okay to where I was like, all right, I'm not upset that we're, going to review this and follow this story. But then after Dark Web, I started to regret things. And then with the fill-in issues, I was like, okay, I'm not really digging these fill-in issues just to set up Natasha with a symbiote. And this started to become something that I really dislike in a lot of modern comics, which is power stacking, changing the identity of characters like superheroes, like Eddie becoming Carnage and things like that. Although I do kind of find that a little bit interesting. I have not read that book yet, so I can't really comment further, but that is not a bad concept in my opinion, to try to do something with that where it's Eddie and the Carnage symbiote, which is technically has a Cletus in there, technically, because they're bonded by blood. So for me, this whole Venom War thing, though, as I was reading it, first issue, I think I did a short on it. I don't know if I still have it on the channel or not, but it was a short where I talked about issue 1 and how disappointed I was that it was, you have Iban Coelho, one of the best artists in the industry, who we've been talking about on this channel since starting the Venom vlog. You had just top talent working on this from an art standpoint, and you just have mediocre, in my opinion, scripts and story and plot and writing and situations for these characters to be in. And it was really frustrating because I don't like the waste of a good artist. That's one of my biggest things as an editor in comics. I'm like, if you're going to get this artist, you need to really give them something that that showcases their amazing ability to draw and their, all their strengths, but maybe challenge them on some way to get them to elevate themselves even bigger. That's the thing is, I remember Jeff Johns once saying with Blackest Night, if you're going to do an event book, because originally Blackest Night was not going to be this big event with all these tie-ins and everything and these miniseries, and he actually flew to New York to work with all the editors, because that's where they were at the time in DC, to plan out everything and to get into arguments with other writers and editors and say, no, this is what I think we need to do. And, or here, let me hear your idea. Okay, that's not so bad. That's actually really good. So we can factor that. And that sets up this Ted Kord thing or whatever. And, and they can go back and forth and we can bring back the Blue Beetle book for one issue. And ideas spurn from that kind of discourse and stuff with challenging each other. And he would talk about how if I'm expecting fans to buy every issue of Blackest Night and the tie-ins for $4 a pop or whatever, when you add all that up, it's $200 worth of comic books almost. Same with Venom War, it's over $100 worth of comic books, to the point where you're I want people to be happy that they bought this and they got the best quality from all of us, that every writer, even if it's a writer they've never heard of, that's the best that writer has done. It's a quality book to tie into this event that we thought out, we structured out the, emotional beats, all the action beats, and we came together and this is our product. And I just don't see that happening with event books ever. I'm not saying those people don't email or call or, discuss things and try to work out beats. I'm not saying the work isn't being put in. I just think more work could be put in on a lot of these event books, especially with something like Dark Web, and I feel like with Venom War too. So with some of the tie-ins, like I said, like I like the Daredevil one-shot, that was kind of fun. I like the Wolverine miniseries, that was kind of fun too. The Kev Walker, I think, was the artist on it. I like the artwork on it. The Deadpool stuff was kind of funny. The Venomous, anti-Venom stuff with Romanoff and Flash Thompson was kind of cool. But a lot of that other stuff just kind of fell away. Like the Zombiote story, I didn't really care for. And the Zombiotes concept in general, like I hate that these events, they're like, we have to have minions. There has to be like, dragons from Null, which is like, okay, that's fine. That was a little different or whatever. But then now we got to have more symbiotes invading New York, this time on dead bodies. And then when this event ends, all those Zombiotes disappear. And then you just have corpses fall on the ground in New York. Like talk about traumatic things that New York is going through, and they dismiss it. Like every time they do one of these big events like this, they do these traumatic things. Like in Blackest Night, and that's why I use it as an example, the dead came back in that, and there was emotional reactions from everybody who had to deal with those Black Lanterns, and they wrote a reason why certain people came back from the dead as Black Lanterns and why some didn't. And they worked that into the story because they knew people would ask those questions. This did not feel like they gave a crap about what kind of questions the audience would ask. They were just like, let's just write it. Zombiotes are the minions. We're going to involve Alchemex because we got to wrap up that storyline, even though it was totally pointless to have, just this board meeting with the Life Foundation with Carlton Drake. Like his resurrection seemed totally pointless, unless Al Ewing plans to do something with that later. Like, all of this just seems so dumb. Like, Meridius could have just walked into that board meeting at Alchemex without Carlton Drake's connections, without anything, and just done his thing. He's that powerful. So it was just so pointless. There's so many things in the story that I just felt like were ultimately pointless, and they weren't the best representation of what Al Ewing is capable of, maybe what Jordan White as an editor is capable of, even a Bond, who I think is amazing as an artist and killed it on every page. But I just felt like, I wish he was drawing something that I was more invested in as a story. Like this just wasn't it. Just doing this whole wrestling thing, it just like, it felt like an AI almost, like I wonder if Al is not AL, if it's AI, because it's like, all right, well, wrestling is kind of a big thing again to an extent, and there's a fan base for wrestling, so let's involve wrestling, and then let's involve this, and okay, we got to have New York taken over, and it just felt like a hodgepodge of all things that have been done before and just random, pop culture things that are in at the time to try to merge it all together, and that's what it felt like. It felt like AI. How it takes, glimpses of other people's art to create an image. This felt like it was taking other people's concepts of stories and trying to make a story out of it. And for that, I felt like I hope no one got paid except for the artists to write these stories. That's how I feel about Venom War. And I know that sounds mean, and that mean part is kind of still there, but that is honestly how I feel about this book, about Venom War. Like, it's not, sure, maybe not the worst thing I've ever read. I've certainly seen a lot of strange things done with symbiotes over the years, but I thought we were kind of getting past that. And I thought we were really looking at Eddie and examining him as a character. And I thought Al was really trying to do that. But then you see these interviews where he's like, yeah, Rom V left the book. And he's like, around this issue. And I'm like, well, that's weird, because instinctively I felt a shift when I was reading the book around those issues that something was missing, something had changed. Some of the concepts and ideas that were being introduced that were kind of interesting, like Kang and Eddie Brock becoming friends, that all gets summed up in one issue, like it and then to not organically do the, Romanoff symbiote thing, but to just be like, all right, Al, you're off the book for a couple issues, and we're gonna have this other writer come in and set that up. It's like, so that makes me feel like that wasn't even part of Al's story, really, and it was something editorial came up with, and it was like shoehorned in to either give a friend some writing work or something. And it's like, dude, why didn't you just make that its own miniseries and just let Al keep going? And maybe him and his art team needed a break. Maybe they were behind on scripts or artwork or something. So there's a lot of reasons that could be the case. But it's just one of those things where I felt like this story kept getting interrupted, and then one of the talented brains behind it, because I think Al is still a talented person, but you had these two minds that were kind of working on this story, and one of them left. And I don't know how real vital Rom V was in the overall thing, but it sounded like from that interview with Al Ewing that Rom did contribute a lot, and that there was a lot of dialogue there on what they were going to lead to, and that Venom War was always the plan, but how Venom War played out, I guess, didn't really go exactly how they had discussed in the beginning, because Al kind of took it over on his own. So for me, this whole event where it's like, they have this father-son story, and you have these moments like that are pretty good moments, like the moment where, you have Dylan has to kill his father basically, or stab him. And then that lures Meridius out, and then they get a chance to take on Meridius. But then you throw in like the time traveling Dylan, so you kind of got like a Bishop, or kind of X-Men. That feels very X-Men to me, where it's like this time traveler coming back to try to set things right. Yeah, that kind of story going on. And he's got like white hair, so it's kind of like Trunks from Dragon Ball Z. Trunks. That's how I always thought Cable and Trunks, and it's like these time traveling guys have white hair. And so like that's what Dylan but he was older. He was an older guy, so that makes sense. It was kind of grayish, but still, it was like that seems like a trope I see sometimes. But overall, like I just felt like this story didn't really matter. Like I would say if Donny Cates somehow came back to writing Marvel stuff again and picked up with a new Venom #1, and he was like, you know what, I'm just going to start where I left off with Eddie Brock in space and Dylan on Earth, and I have a story I'm going to tell, I would probably read that book and not care if this all got retconned or overlooked. Although, like I said, the one silver lining is that I did kind of like the wrap-up conclusion, in a way, I guess, of their story with like Peter Parker and the symbiote. I felt there was some good closure there. And then I felt like the concept of Eddie Brock having to merge with Carnage for them to both stay alive is an interesting concept. I don't know if the book itself is interesting. Like I said, I haven't read it, but it is a cool concept in my eyes. And to me, that would have left for Dylan to be Venom again. But alas, that's not happening. And then, you have these interviews with Al Ewing saying like, I felt like I struggled finding the voice for this character. And on Venom War, I think he said, I think I finally found the voice, and that's leading me into my next storyline. And to me, I'm like, but as someone who doesn't like Venom War, that's a weird statement to say, I found my voice for the character on this book, which I'm like, but that book is not good in my opinion. And all these other concepts that are coming out of it, aside from the Eddie Brock Carnage one, I'm not digging any of them. To the point where as the Venom vlog, I'm like, I'm not even going to read them and review them. So I think that speaks a lot, for like my personal feelings. And again, like, I don't know if the people who made these books will ever see my videos. I cut down a lot of like, I guess upsetness, because I would look on X and see fans say similar things that I was saying. And I started not liking that. I started being like, wow, I'm starting to sound like this person who I feel complains all the time about stuff. And I'm not someone who complains all the time. When something I like, I really like it. And I try to really push it and say it's awesome and try to, spread the word on it if I can. But I started looking at this and going like, man, I sound like a lot of these people, even though I have a similar opinion, but I sound as angry as them. And I shouldn't really get that worked up over a comic book. Like it's even though I spent money buying every single one of these issues so I can talk about them, I was like, I don't even want to talk about them. I kept putting this video off because I was just like, man, I'm too negative. I'm just way too negative. And in this one, I wanted to be more tempered, because I'm hoping that if Al Ewing or Jordan White or anyone writes it, but anyone watches this, like I hope you guys just hear from a Venom fan the disappointment in my voice, and how how I just really don't like most of what you all have worked really hard on, I guess, to create, because I know you worked hard. It's easy to just dismiss. I see other YouTubers do it where they just dismiss it and say, they're phoning it in, they're doing this. I don't like to believe that of people. I've seen that. I always use the example like, hey, if you got an office job, or you work at fast food, or you work in retail or something like that, there's always going to be the people that do really good at the job and who go above and beyond. And then there's always going to be people who kind of go right above the bare minimum. Then you got the bare minimum people and the people who do less than bare minimum, and you're all still getting paid the same. And I don't feel like that's fair. A lot of times, I think hard work should be, pushed and promoted and recognized and you know, and compensated in some kind of way. But I feel like sometimes these stories, like you got like good writers, and this is all objective because it's art and stuff. But to me, you have people that do go above and beyond, and then you have people doing the bare minimum. And I would say this, I feel like people tried. I feel like people, Al and everyone really tried on this book. So I would not call any of them lazy by any means. And the art, clearly, on Venom War especially, and some of the tie-ins, were not lazy. Like, it was this hard work to put comics together. And I understand that firsthand. Like, I know how hard comics are to put together and to get them out monthly and the stress of that, and then trying to ignore what people say online because you're like, well, if I can just get my story told. And I feel like I gave Al Ewing and this team plenty of time to tell their story. I mean, almost 40 issues of Venom, again, before another reboot, and tie-ins and other books that he appeared in and books that Dylan appeared in. And I've given you guys way too much money, in my opinion, to at least hold back on how I really feel, which is Venom War sucks. This book sucks, and I don't think it's a good representation of Al's writing. I think it's really great showcase of Iban's art. I mean, he does a killer job on it. Some things he's drawing, and I'm like, man, I'm not invested in this. Like, yeah, it's cool to see like a liquidy Carnage move around a Meridius or get turned into a spear and used or something. It's like, okay, that's neat, but it's in the backdrop of like a wrestling ring and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I really don't. And this, it was like half trying to be meta and half not, and it was like Eddie talking to the people, like with the mic in the first issue, and he's like looking at the camera and calling out Meridius, and then you have Meridius who's just like I said, walks into a board meeting with Carlton Drake that he didn't need Carlton Drake to get into. No reason to resurrect Carlton Drake. Like, it just feels like, again, AI wrote this. It was like not Al Ewing, but AI. It was like, oh, well, Carlton Drake was used in one of the Venom movies, so people kind of know who he is now, so we should bring him back. But for nothing that really, like, yeah, there's moments he is part of the story, but I don't think you really needed him at all. And so when you have characters that are, if you take them out of the story, the same events can still happen, then that to me is another sign of bad writing and bad story structure and bad characterization and bad use of characters and everything. Lee Price coming back and still being the remaining zombiote for some reason. Like, I mean, all these things I don't care. When I finished this book, especially on the latest read that I did just a couple days ago, I was like, I don't care. And I don't want to get into the miniseries and stuff because there's not a lot of depth there either. I mean, there was some cool moments and stuff and some cool character interactions, but overall, I'm like, I don't really care. But for Al, I just can't get behind a lot of his current stuff. Like, I don't like Venom War. I tried out his Absolute Green Lantern because I'm a huge Green Lantern fan. That's my favorite DC character. And although, again, there's some interesting concepts there, like, how Jordan being like the Black Hand of that universe. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. It comes down to how he writes characters. And I don't think he does a great job on certain books, like certain characters. And that's my personal opinion on it. And, obviously people can disagree, but I think sales reflect some of what I feel. Like, Venom is not a top-selling book like it was when Donny Cates was on it. I mean, that was one of the premier books at Marvel. Even when I was criticizing, Donny's run, those books were still selling like crazy into issues 20 and 30 and, onward. And now, like, you got Venom, and the sales are okay, they're good, but they're not like they were. Venom is not the rock star that he was. And there's no excuse why they couldn't keep up that momentum. And I think they tried. They put their best foot forward because Al Ewing's Hulk run before this was outstanding. And I think he did some Thor stuff too. And so it was cool to see, like, I got excited for this book on one level, but I was like, yeah, but I still don't want to review it because I feel like this is a good endpoint. And so I just wanted to focus on the third Venom movie. But I got pulled back in, and that's fine. I don't regret overall reading this and forming a informed opinion. I'd rather that than me talk out of my butt and having never read it and tell you that it's not good. Like, I'd rather you hear that I didn't like it after I read it. So for me, I just wanted to do an off-the-cuff, spill my brain out, talk to you guys about Venom War, show off maybe a little bit of artwork, but really just kind of keep it like this and just kind of keep it personal and explain why this video took a while. I needed to separate myself from it. Like I said, I don't like making that type of content where I'm just spewing hate at people. Like, that is not what I've ever wanted to do on this channel. And to see that side of me actually was a little upsetting. Like, to watch that video and edit it and try to edit out some of the intense negativity to try to still make a salvageable video out of it. I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't do this knowing that the full cut of this is just me really projecting anger too, because in December we had a lot of health issues in December with aneurysms, and we had to get them coiled, and we were going through a lot, and I think my anger was misdirected, so like that's why I deleted that video. I still said the same things I said in that video in this video for the most part, maybe with a little less vitriol, but that vitriol came from a pain I was going through. And I realized that is not how I want to represent myself when talking about someone's hard work. So, I hope you guys made it through this video. I hope I explained myself pretty well. And I hope you get my feelings on Venom War overall, even though we didn't go into details like I have, like with the discussion videos where I really break things down. I have another video coming up where I'm going to explain why also I didn't want to do that in this one. And one of the reasons is because after filming that and watching it and trying to edit it, I realized something about myself, which is I don't really care on some level about what I think about stuff anymore. Or I guess I should say I don't always care to share it. And I think that's why the next video you're going to see on this channel about when we're going to end this channel will shine a bigger light on that. Because, there was a void I had, and this show filled it. The Venom vlog was something that I didn't know I needed in my life. When we were about to do that show, Venom vlog episode 1, I was reacting to Tom Hardy training to be Venom. And I was about to quit YouTube at that point. I was like, it's a hobby, but I have real life stuff. I got a lot going on. I should really focus on that stuff and kind of push this to the side. But the Venom stuff took off, and it introduced me to a lot of you. Like, I think I had like 300 subscribers on this channel for years. And then I did the Venom vlog, and now over the same amount of years, because it was like 6 or 7 years of getting up to 300 subscribers. And then now 6 or 7 years getting to 3,300 subscribers. So we went 3,000 subscribers that we got on this channel from doing the Venom vlog. And that's, I can't thank you all enough. But now I'm at this point in my life where that void was filled. You guys all made me, really come on here and like lose sleep sometimes, like working, jobs in LA and going to events so I could bring content to you. Like, you all got me to do things that were beyond my comfort zone and challenged me as a person. And I'm always going to be grateful for that. But now there's something else, another void. And I think I realized while filming and editing the Venom War original video that my cup is full, and it's full of symbiote. and I'm ready to see what's next, what the next thing is, especially with how much our lives have changed over the years with our diagnosis and everything. So if you're still watching this, I thank you again. I kind of got off topic there, but I wanted to explain the lack of content, at least a little bit on this video, and then go more into it in the next video. But for those of you who stuck around and waited for this Venom War, I hope this was at least somewhat satisfying of a video for you. I'm sure some of you are curious and you would love to see the original version of it, but I deleted it. I mean, that footage is gone. I would never represent myself in that way because I felt like I disappointed myself on a level, like not because I was mean. Like I have the capability of being mean for sure, but I felt like a lot of my anger was from the health stuff I was going through, and that was pushing me to be more angry. And that kind of anger, Al Ewing and Jordan White and all the people that, and Aban Coelho and everyone who worked really hard on this series, whether I like it or not, they did not deserve that. And so that is why that was, scrubbed. And that's why you're getting this video in its place. So I hope I explained myself. There is still a couple more videos I want to make. We just lost Peter David, and my heart broke. I tried, to give. I bought, variant covers that some of that money went to him. I tried to do what I could as a fan of his. because I know he was struggling financially, and it breaks my heart to lose him. So I have a video that we're going to make at some point soon about all of his symbiote Spider-Man miniseries, because we never really covered all of them. And I'm going to cover that soon, and we'll talk about Peter David in that video. So there will still be some more Venom vlogs. The channel's not going away right now. We still got some stuff to do and stuff to make, but I have to take my time with it, and I'll explain more in the next video. But for now, Venom War, if I was going to rate this book, I would probably give it a 1 out of 5, maybe a 2 because of Iban Coelho's artwork. I would say his artwork alone is worth the 2 points. Or maybe it's worth like a 1.5 because it's really good. And that there's a couple moments in this, like the Peter Parker symbiote moment, their conversation together. And then like some of the Dylan moments, like we're okay. And then, I don't know, Eddie though, and Meridius and all that stuff, I really didn't like them overall throughout this story. I did like Flash though, and that moment where he kind of gave up the anti-venom suit, and then Eddie got it, and he like went into like a meditative trance to like fight off the zombiotes. Like there were some interesting moments in this, and that moment kind of reminded me a little bit of Spider Island, where Eddie was anti-venom and saved everybody in New York. And so again, they had some moments, but again, it felt like AI pulling from other things that have already happened to make this story, and that's a bummer. I think everyone who worked on this book, I will continue to support you in the future. I'm going to drop out of Absolute Green Lantern for now. The first couple issues I'm not really a big fan of, but maybe in the trade I'll check it out, and I'll see if I come around to it. But for Venom, like I can't support any more Venom books, and that's just how I feel. And it kind of does break my heart, because even though I wasn't going to do the show anymore, I would still like to keep up with the character. But if anything, I might check out the Carnage Eddie Brock story when it's out in trade. I might check that out, but the rest I'm going to ignore. Like, I don't care. Mary Jane's a cool character. I don't, and there's maybe some cathartic moments you can have with her bonding with the symbiote. But since a lot of that got retconned with Brand New Day and then unretconned, and did that still happen? I'm going to assume it still happened, but I don't think the writing team is capable of making that work, in my personal opinion. I could be wrong, but I'm never going to read it to really find out, probably, or maybe if it goes on super discount one day, I'll check it out to again be fair, and because if I'm going to dislike something, I should read it before I dislike it. But right now I'm just like kind of neutral on it. I just don't care, and I don't want to be one of those angry fans that I see on X that just complains about every detail of every issue. I just don't want to do that. I'm getting too old for that kind of stuff, and there's way bigger problems to deal with. If I don't like something, I just speak with my wallet and I walk away. So to the people working on Venom, you have the job I would kill for, and I don't think I could do any better of a job. I think just like you, I would try my best and hope people like it. But for me as a fan, I did not like what you have done with this character, and I'm heartbroken that I'm not going to read anymore for a while. And I don't like this trope that keeps getting done where, like Moon Knight dies and then we replace him and then he comes back, and then, Matt Murdock dies and we replace him and then he comes back, and now Venom is, was gone and now he's merged with somebody else, and, they replaced it. It's like, I don't know. I don't really just like that trope that I see. Marvel is a very rinse and repeat company. They share a lot of ideas, and while some ideas work for some characters, I don't think they work for all characters. And so in this case, I'm not a fan of what they're doing with Venom, and that's just how I feel. So I would say final score on Venom War, maybe 2 out of 5. Everyone who's worked on it, keep up your work. Iban, I'll read your next book. Al, I'm going to take a break from you for a while. I hope I can read some of yours again one day, like Hulk and Ultimates and other things that I've liked of yours in the past. I hope to like your stuff again. But for now, I'm stepping away. So thank you guys. Thanks for waiting for this video. Hopefully I got across what I wanted to, and that you're satisfied with it. And let me know down below. And if you want to talk about specific moments in the story that we didn't discuss in this video, let's talk in the comments for sure. That's what it's there for. Thanks so much. See you in the future. Peace.